Get Sharp Again, our mission is to educate and empower people to take charge of their cognitive health. Now, we do that by helping to support people in that goal by offering webinars like this one, in-person presentations, and as well as printed materials, and of course, all the information that's available on our website. But by far, our most effective offering is our small group coaching program. This program offers live education and support facilitated by a certified health coach. Now going into our fourth year, we are pleased to let you know that our first programs of 2024 are now open for enrollment. So our first program begins on Tuesday, January 30th at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. The second one begins on Wednesday, February 21st at 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time also. These groups meet via Zoom once a week for 6 consecutive weeks. Working with a professional health coach, in the small group program, the participants begin to identify and modify lifestyle factors that might be impacting their brain health. They learn from one another's experiences, and I have to say that this group experience, this community experience, has been the highest ranked aspect of this program. And they also acquire the tools needed to strengthen their cognition. Now, during this program, we focus on 4 lifestyle areas, which we know greatly affect cognition and which people have control over, which is stress, sleep, nutrition, and exercise. Participants have access to an online teaching platform for educational videos, quizzes, and resources that accompany the topic module, which prepare them for each virtual coaching session. Now, the price of this program is $99 and is significantly subsidized through the generosity of our donors because the actual cost of this program is $450 per participant. So if you're just beginning to notice some memory impairment or you want to learn how to keep your brain sharp, this program is for you. And Joan will be sending out more information about this program and let you know how to register for it in her follow-up email. So I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Carol Karp.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Before we turn to today's program, I just want to let you know about the next offering in our webinar series, the final webinar for 2023. This webinar is going to be on Thursday, December 7th at 1 p.m. Dr. Eileen Naomi Rusk from the Brain and Behavioral Clinic in Boulder, Colorado, will give a presentation titled The Upside of Stress for Brain Health. She will outline how to work with stress so that it can be optimized for better brain health. She'll be discussing stress reduction and developing stress resilience, very timely for the holiday season. For today, I'm pleased to welcome Tami Briggs, who will be presenting on the healing power of music. Tami is the president of Musical Reflections, located in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She is a therapeutic harpist and has played the harp at the bedside of hundreds of hospital and hospice patients. Tami has produced 15 CDs for relaxation, comfort, and stress reduction, and has written 2 books. Her newest venture is founding an organization called Healing Harps for Global Peace and Unity, with harpists from around the world playing for peace and love. Please join me today in welcoming Tami Briggs as she presents the healing power of music.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carol and Joan. And this really came about because I'm friends with Myra Oni, and I don't know, about 6 or 8 months ago, we talked about this, and so I'm just grateful to be with you today to talk a little bit about music for your healing journey and specifically how it relates to your brain health. So I want to begin with a reading that comes from a book called Transitions, and this is a book that's written by Julia Cameron, and some of you may know Julia Cameron's work. She's the woman that wrote The Artist's Way, and that's her best known book. But this book has a short paragraph about music, and I'd like to begin with these words. Our days flow like music. Allowing music to move through our days, we shape the symphony of our life. Music is a teacher, and we can welcome the lessons that it bears. Music teaches us about grace. It teaches us about harmony. It also teaches us the importance of tempo and the need for rest. Today, I open my heart to music. I allow music to teach and temper me, and I take time to appreciate and savor graceful notes. That's a writing from Julia Cameron's Transitions book about music. And to pull us in community together today, what I would like to do is play two songs. The first song is called Healers of the Heart, and the second song is Ode to Joy. And while I play these two songs, I would invite you to sit comfortably and let the music touch you wherever you need to be touched. Healers of the Heart and Ode to Joy. I'm Tami Briggs, and I've been playing the harp for 34 years. And I grew up playing piano, but my piano teacher was also a harpist, and she planted the seed when I was a little child and was taking piano lessons. And when I turned 30, I was going through a really hard time in my life. So I ended up giving myself harp lessons for my 30th birthday. I had not given myself a gift before that time, but that year it was really important that I gift myself with the harp. And when I ran my fingers up and down the strings, which is called the glissando, which is probably what the harp is best known for, I thought that was a wonderful sound and also a really cool feeling in my fingers. So I literally fell in love with the instrument. And about 5 years after I started taking lessons with the harp, I happened upon a teacher who was teaching harpists how to take the instrument into hospitals and hospice and nursing homes. And so I studied with her in her very first program in 1995. And at the time that I studied with her, I was deathly afraid of going into hospitals, to the extent that ever since I was a small child, I would go into hospitals and I would pass out. So I obviously had a lot of my own healing that I had to do before I would ever be able to offer this as a gift. And shortly after I finished the International Harp Therapy Program, which is where I have my certification, I took the plunge and went into a hospital um, on a very beautiful October Minnesota day, and I played for 6 patients and I didn't pass out. Yay! And so I knew then that if I didn't pass out doing this work solo, I would be okay to continue. And so before COVID, then for those 25, almost 25 years, I played a lot at the hospital and hospice bedside and used the music as a healing modality. And when COVID came along, it literally erased all of the harpists going into hospitals because we were no longer allowed in. And it really changed my whole trajectory. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is kind of pre-COVID, and then also what I'm doing since COVID, which I think is also relevant to you all and the world today. So what I want to do with the bulk of our time together today is really talk about how you can use music in your healing journey, whether that's with some early memory impairment, or maybe you're working with others that have brain health issues. And so I hope my comments are broad enough to, connect with each of you. The first topic that I want to talk about with music's role in our healing journey is comfort. Music can be a great comfort, and I think sometimes if we feel like, oh my gosh, am I getting dementia, or I've already been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it's very scary. And so what I would invite us to think about is what music can give us comfort in that time in our life. And music is a very personal thing. What resonates with you may not be at all what resonates with the next person. So my invitation here is really around you personally thinking about what works for you. And you may find within your family system, maybe what you like isn't at all what your children like, or what your husband likes, or etc. So again, it's just a very personal thing. I want to share a song that you may or may not recognize. And while I play this song, I would invite you to let the music touch you wherever you need to be touched. And then I'll share the story about this song, specifically how it relates to comfort. And the song is called Suogan, and it's a Welsh lullaby. And if I could see a show of hands, probably no one would raise their hand to say that they knew that song. And I want to share a story that happened about this song probably around 20 years ago. I was involved in a research study where we were looking at the benefits of live harp music on oncology patients, and we wanted to know specifically if it helped their anxiety. And half of the group got 30 minutes of live harp music I played at each of their bedsides, and the other half of the sample didn't get music. They got 30 minutes of quiet time. And those that got the music, I was supposed to play the same repertoire of music for each patient because they didn't want that song list to be a variable in the study. And the song that I just played, Suogan, was kind of in the middle of this repertoire. I was playing for a woman who had ovarian cancer, and she stopped me after I played Suogan, and she said, "What is the name of that song?" And I said, "Well, it's called Suogan. It's a Welsh lullaby." And she said, "Oh, yeah." She said, "You know, my grandmother immigrated here from Wales, and she used to sing that song to me when I was a little child, and I haven't heard it in years. Would you please play it again?" So needless to say, we tossed her out of the research study because I wasn't supposed to talk to people, much less play songs twice, right? And the next day I got called back up on the floor to play for a different patient. And the nurse who was taking care of, we'll call her Susan, the day before, pulled me aside and said, "What was the name of that song yesterday that you played for Susan?" And I said, "Well, it's called Suogan. It's a Welsh lullaby." She said, "You know, after you left the floor, Susan rang for me to come into her room, the nurse to come in, and Susan said to the nurse, 'You know, when that harpist played that lullaby, I believe that was my grandmother who appeared as my angel of healing, and I know I'm going to be just fine.'" And I love that story because I think it's such a great example of how music gives great comfort. And Suogan is actually a song in our beginning harp book that we learned very early on as harpists. And I've played that song thousands of times, actually, and never had anybody respond like that lady. So that's my point, where how music can be such a personal choice. And I would invite you to think about, what music would give you comfort on your journey. Another song that I find gives comfort to a lot of people is Pachelbel's Canon. And Pachelbel's is 8 notes over and over, and it's that repetition that gives us great comfort. So hopefully that gave you comfort. And the next topic that I want to talk about to use in your healing journey is how to help boost your cognition, specific since this is sharp again. And there's kind of two camps of music that we're going to talk about. One is familiar music. This is music that you recognize, music that you know, you can sing along to. And then there's non-familiar music. And I want to play an example of something that's not recognizable, non-familiar, and then I'll share a story specifically of playing with Alzheimer's patients for this type of music, non-familiar. So that's an example of something that you probably didn't recognize, but you can kind of follow along. And when I was playing at the hospital and hospice bedside, and especially when I was working with a lot of folks in intensive care, I would tend to play non-familiar music because what happens with familiar music is it can trigger memories. It can also bring up lots of emotions. And so when I was working with intensive care, a lot of the people were really, really ill. And I didn't want them to use energy on what's the name of that song, who wrote that song, what are the words to that song. I really wanted them to just use the music as a way to drift and go wherever they needed to go. How this connects to brain health. So when I was playing a lot at different organizations and different environments, one of the gigs that I had, as we call them in the music business, was playing for English Rose Suites, which is a group of Alzheimer's houses here in the Twin Cities. And it's a woman who started this organization, and she would find beautiful homes in neighborhoods and then convert them for Alzheimer's patients. And she would invite me to come in and play once a quarter for several of her houses. And one day I brought my folk harp. This is my pedal harp, so I don't take this one ever out to these kinds of facilities, but I took my folk harp and I was tuning it and warming up and getting ready. And as I was warming up, I played something similar to what I just played, something non-familiar that was just, me getting warmed up, as I'm saying. And what I noticed with the residents as they started to congregate was they were really agitated and they were fidgety and they couldn't settle. And it was a moment for me to recognize, oh, they want something familiar. They want something that they know, that they can recognize, that they can grab a hold of, if you will. And the non-familiar was just almost irritating to them. And the research that I have seen and that I'm aware of says that the part of the brain that stores music is the last part of the brain that is touched by dementia and Alzheimer's. And so that's why if you have a loved one that maybe doesn't recognize you, doesn't remember your name anymore, is out of context, like, why are you here? Why are you visiting me? And yet, if you play Oh Danny Boy, they can sing the words, they can hum along to the melody, and they may even get up and dance. And it's because that part of the brain that stores music is the last part to be touched. And that's why music on this journey is such a powerful modality, because it can really help ground patients. It can help bring them into the present moment. And after you play Oh Danny Boy, they may have absolutely no recollection that you were even there, but that's okay because it brought them into that beautiful present moment. And I can't tell you how many times I played and like a daughter was visiting a mom, let's say, and they would hold hands. And again, after I'd play, she'd have the mom maybe would have zero recollection of what I had just played, but that moment of connection between mother and daughter was very heartwarming and very um, beautiful to experience and witness that. And that I saw as the healing power of music. That's the topic of our conversation today. So I'll play a song that um, I think you'll probably recognize, and I'll share a story about this song after I finish it. The song is Edelweiss. And if I could see hands, like how many of you love Edelweiss, right? It's just like one of everybody's all-time favorite, it feels like. And the story that I want to share, yes, I see a hand clapping, yay. Um, so Edelweiss was one of the very first songs I ever memorized because I had the opportunity to live in Switzerland. And I came back from Switzerland, and shortly thereafter I started playing the harp. And so to memorize Edelweiss was a way for me to connect energetically with my beautiful Swiss families and the wonderful experience that I had had in that beautiful country. And shortly after I started recording, I now have 15 CDs, but I think I had 2 done at the time. I was at a conference in Mankato, Minnesota, which is about an hour and a half south of the Twin Cities where I live. And I had a little table set up. I had my 2 CDs there, and I had my folk harp sitting at the table. And a young girl came up and she said, "Oh, I love the harp. Would you please play something?" Well, Edelweiss was about all I had memorized, so I started playing Edelweiss, and she started sobbing. And I finished the song, and I said to her, "What happened here? Like, what are your tears about?" And she said, "You know, that was my mom's all-time favorite song, and she just died 2 months ago of cancer." And so my point here is familiar music can sometimes take us right into the heart of our emotions. So whether it's sadness, joy, fear, whatever the emotion is, familiar music can take us right into the heart of it. So I'm just inviting you to be intentional and mindful for yourself and those you're serving with cognitive impairment, because it may trigger a memory and you just need to be aware or be alerted to that. And when she started crying, that was not the response I expected with Edelweiss. So again, it's just about being, mindful and intentional on what type of music, and you can even think about genres. So maybe there's patriotic or oldies or big band or classical, like what genre brings you comfort, what genre would help boost your cognition. Again, we're just asking those questions for you to reflect and think about. How are we doing with questions, Joan? Do we have anything that I need to address so far, or can we wait till we're closer to the end?
I don't see any questions yet, but Paula M. knew right away that you were playing Edelweiss.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Yeah, and if you have questions along, just, please put them in the chat, and then we'll be glad to answer them as soon as I'm finished with what I have planned for today. So the next topic that I want to talk about is in your role within the healing journey is relaxation. And do you think it's fair to say the harp is one of, if not the most relaxing instruments of all? And I always used to kiddingly say, if I put people to sleep, I've done my best work. So it's really about relaxation, deep relaxation, and ultimately sleep. And the principle that I want to talk about with relaxation is called entrainment. And this is in your handouts if you want to look at it. Entrainment, by definition, is where our bodies synchronize with different pulses and different rhythms. It's where our bodies synchronize with different pulses or rhythms. An example of this would be on a hot summer day, if you pull up to a stoplight and you've got your windows rolled down and some teens pull up beside you and they've got heavy metal music on, and maybe that's not exactly your favorite music. If you sit there long enough beside them, you might get tense, your body might get tense, and if you sit there long enough, your body will pulse to the beat of their music. That's entrainment. That's what we're talking about, is pulsing with different things around you. Obviously, it's music. It's our air conditioning and heating HVAC systems. It's we can entrain with even sounds that we hear on computer or television, etc. And I want to give you a hospital example where I was literally chased down the hall to play for a gentleman that had had brain surgery. It was an ear-to-ear incision. And it's my understanding that when they open the skull like that, there's a lot of air that gets in and it causes a really agitated recovery. And he was writhing all over the bed. He would have been on the floor had he not been restrained. And the nurse chased me down the hall and said, "I can't get this guy to settle. Would you please try your harp?" So what I ended up doing is I walked him through the 4 boxes there on the handout. It starts with a pain burst, if you see where I'm talking about in the handouts. And so I set my harp up. I played just as agitated as I could. And after about maybe 2 or 3 minutes of that, I just started slowing down the pulse just a tiny little bit and moving him into the second box, which is the ribbon of reflection. You can see a little ribbon of tape. And again, after 2 or 3 minutes, just slowing the pulse down even more, moving him into the third box, which is the meditative state. And then at the end, and this was probably 10, 11 minutes, at that point he was sleeping and the music was just barely pulsing, barely pulsing. So he literally went from writhing all over the bed to sleep just by slowing the pulse. You can do this with your voice. You can do this with your body language. And teachers in particular know that if they've got a classroom that's all wound up, speak slower, lower your voice, soften your body language. And what happens is the children will entrain with that more relaxed state. That's entrainment. And the statistic that I've seen with demented patients is that about 85% of this population has some form of agitation. So it's a huge issue within cognitive development, and this is where the harp can help calm idleness down. So I want to demonstrate this. Now my goal is not necessarily to put you to sleep, but if you go to sleep, we'll bring you back, hopefully. Although there's a lot of black screens, so I won't know if you're still sleeping. But what I would invite you as I play this is just keep your body language open. Don't cross your arms in front of you, and let the music pulse so that you can feel this demonstration of entrainment. And then I'll bring you back when we're finished. Did you feel that? That's entrainment. So I want to mention a CD as a resource that I created probably, I don't know, 10 years or so ago. It's called Calm as the Night, and it's the entrainment principle, and it's specific to help people idle down from stress, relaxation into deep sleep. And I created this CD because after I would speak, I would literally get bombarded. I can't sleep, my kids can't sleep, my patients can't sleep, my mom can't sleep. So it's a huge issue in our culture. And this is a non-pharmacological approach. And each song, there's 5 10-minute songs on this CD, and each song starts slow and keeps getting slower and slower, just like what I demonstrated. So it helps us move into that deep relaxation. And the other thing about entrainment is it works both directions. So if you are doing an activity, maybe you're mowing lawn or washing dishes or cleaning house or something where you want to move through it, pick music with a big pulse, a big beat. It'll give you energy and it'll help you do that activity and move you through it. My bias is, as a world now, we are so revved up and we're so on all the time, and we need the idle down of the harp, and the harp can help calm us and really move us into that relaxed space. So that's a little bit about using music for your healing journey, comfort, boosting your cognition with familiar versus non-familiar music, and relaxation. I want to switch gears just slightly, and I want to talk about a little peace harp, which are these little 12-string instruments. And I'm mentioning this because I think I actually saw somebody say, how long does it take to learn from piano to harp? I saw that question fly by in the Zoom. And these little instruments are kind of a fun little way if you've always wanted to play the harp. This would be a good way to get started. It's 12 strings. They're very sweet sounding. And we know that it's really good to learn something new for our brains. And this, if you've always wanted to do this, this is an opportunity. It's called the peace harp because I don't know if you can see this, but the woman that makes these is in New Hampshire, and she carves a peace dove and an olive branch in the sound box. And I don't have it mic'd up like I do my other harp, but maybe you can hear a little bit of a lullaby. Can you hear that at all? So they're just very sweet. And if it speaks to you, you can send me an email and I'll help set you up for that and give you a couple of lessons on it, and just very fun. And also to say, I know in my introduction I mentioned that I'm not playing at the bedside as much now, and what my work is really morphed into is playing a lot for the peace community. And so one of the things that we'll be doing in January is setting up a peace harp choir. That's what I'm going to call it, and we'll be anchors for peace with an initiative that is called Peace on Earth by 2030. And it's one of my passions, and if some of people from this community would want to join us, that would just be really fun and awesome. Anyway, so I have one more thing I want to connect to before we answer questions. One more resource that is a possibility for each of you every week is the International Harp Therapy Program, where I talked about having my certification. There's about 3,000 of us now all over the world that are certified with this particular program. And we're on all continents except Antarctica. And at 5 o'clock on Sunday afternoons, we play Somewhere Over the Rainbow for people that we know need healing, or if you personally need healing. And this came about because in 2008 and 9, when the economy crashed, there were a lot of harp therapists that were in really a lot of difficulty. And so our harp therapy teacher would send out an email and say, oh, so-and-so's in a challenge, let's sit down to our harp and play Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And we would send that across the airwaves to that person. And that went over so well that she said, okay, let's take it one step further and let's play it every Sunday afternoon at 5 o'clock in our respective time zones. And so now you can know that this harp therapy community is playing this beautiful song.
Okay.
Aw.
I'm going to remove the spotlight so that you can, see people. So one of our first questions, you had seen it, how long will it take a pianist to learn to play the harp? I'm guessing that might be depending upon the pianist. Is there?
Yes, and it's not an easy transition, because piano you play thumbs together
Mhm.
and hands go out, and your melody notes are 3, 4, and 5. And with the harp, it's exactly the opposite. So your 1, 2, and 3 are your melody notes, and so it's a really good exercise for your brain as we're talking about brain today, because it's really a brain twist. Like you think, oh yeah, this is easy, and then this is not so easy anyway. And so I mentioned I was in a lot of difficulty when I first started. And one of the things that happened is I had lost my job. And so I had all this time and space on my hands. So I was practicing between 2 and 3 hours a day. And it took me about 6 months to really learn the instrument and build repertoire. But keep in mind, that was probably, double or triple what most people would normally um, learn, do and be able to practice in the beginning. So, yeah.
Amber has a question. Do you want to unmute?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. This has been extremely informative and just beautiful to watch. So thank you for sharing this with us. My question was about the familiar related to non-familiar sounds. And you mentioned that the non-familiar music can be agitated in certain settings. Was that for folks with cognitive decline who are like looking for something to attach to? Can you just say a little bit more about that?
So yes, it's exactly what it was. It was the Alzheimer's houses that I used to play in, and yes, they were trying to ground. They were trying to have something they could relate to, I guess is the word I would use. And so, and in my notebook, and I don't have a lot of the oldies like My Wild Irish Rose and Let Me Call You Sweetheart and Oh Danny Boy. And I mean, I have Oh Danny Boy memorized, but I didn't have a lot of the oldies. And that's what they were looking for. So as soon as I started moving into that, it was like, oh, you just feel like the weight come off their shoulders. Oh yeah, yeah, I like this harpist. Otherwise, they didn't care for me, because like I don't Yeah. So did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yeah, because I'm currently an intern with the Alzheimer's Association, and I'm also in a hospital doing cognitive screenings with folks as they're getting diagnosed. So understanding that insight of, the musical storage center being the last to be affected is really useful information. So thank you.
Yeah, and get CDs or playlists that are, the oldies or traditional hymns if they're Christian, or Jewish
Hmm.
music that they can relate to, or whatever their faith tradition is. And you can ask too, what kind
Yeah,
of music do you like? And that'll be very different than what our kids like, right?
yeah, for
Normally.
sure. Thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah, and I appreciated your hearts. I saw your hearts. When all the screens are black, it's like, oh my gosh, am I putting you to sleep and don't have a clue? And so it's really fun to see your faces here at the end. Thank you.
So we have another question. Does a song have to be of a certain length to be effective to trigger entrainment?
Um, I would say no. So like On Calm as the Night, each of the songs are about 10 minutes. And honestly, I could have just done that 10 minutes and it would have been fine. But I can't sell a CD with only one 10-minute song on it. So I ended up, making 5 of them. Um, the one thing about, so like if you've got somebody that's really agitated and you want to help idle them down, you need to you need to match them where they're at. It's called inclusive attention. Inclusive attention is where you meet them where they're at, and from there, then you come slowly down. And so if someone's really agitated and you turn on Calm as the Night and it's already way slower than where they're at, it won't work. So I'm not answering your question around the actual length of time. I don't think it's the length of time so much around, but it's more about matching the pulse. Does that make sense?
Mhm. And one last question. What is it about the harp that lends itself so well to relaxation and comfort?
So it has to do with the vibrations, and the harp is open strings. So it's the only instrument that is not dampened or deadened by your fingers. So like a guitar, a violin, cello, piano, even, like a piano, you're hitting the hammer and then it's deadening. You're hitting the pads and the hammers and then it deadens. And the harp, the vibrations of those strings ring out. And the only way I'm dampening or deadening the strings is if I come back to those exact strings. And the other thing that's happening with the harp is when I play those 3 notes, all of the E, G, C's up and down are also vibrating. So it's the harmonics. So it's not just the 3 notes that I'm playing, it's the harmonics of 47 strings that are resonating and vibrating. And that's part of what makes it such a powerful instrument, because it's those vibrations. And as I was talking about, this is not necessarily connected to brain health, but in the peace movement, what I'm doing every day now is playing for an hour and rippling out the vibrations of peace and calm, and using a lot of specific intentions around peace. And I didn't talk about intentions with brain health, but I feel very strongly that, setting intentions and manifesting and all of that can be really helpful, not stress inducing, but really being, um, helping us see the path forward. Like, what do I really want to create here? And so, yeah, and all of that, our words, our music, it's all vibration. It's all vibration, and it's all about increasing our consciousness. So that's a whole nother topic, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Tami. This has been just wonderful.